Welcome back, Trailblazers. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to talk about a tool that has completely transformed the way I plan and navigate my hikes, AllTrails Plus. As a Trailheads ambassador and the organizer of the Yakima Valley Trekkers, I'm out on the trails a lot. One of my favorite features of AllTrails Plus is the ability to edit and create my own maps. Conditions change, fallen trees, washed out sections, or even a last-minute reroute. And with AllTrails Plus, I can adjust my route on the fly and share it with others so everyone stays informed and safe. AllTrails Plus also gives you offline maps, wrong turn alerts, and 3D trail previews to help you stay on track and make the most of your adventure. And the best part, you can get 30% off an AllTrails Plus membership with my exclusive link in the episode show notes. So whether you're planning your next big trek or just looking for a new trail to explore, AllTrails Plus has you covered. Check it out and let's hit the trail. Welcome to Season 12 of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan, and each week we're hitting the trail through conversations with extraordinary hikers from across the United States and beyond. Fall is one of those magical times to be outdoors. The air is crisp, the trails are lined with golden leaves, and every step feels like an invitation to slow down and soak in the season. This year, I've had the privilege of sitting down with hikers who bring the same richness to their stories. From through hikers reflecting on lessons learned, to everyday adventurers chasing larch season, and finding peace on quiet trails, their voices remind us that the outdoors isn't just about reaching summits. It's about connection, reflection, and discovery. So lace up your boots, grab your favorite warm drink for the trail, and get ready. Season 12 is here, and the conversations ahead are as colorful as the fall landscapes we love. In this week's episode, we caught up with a familiar face, John Mark, last on the show back in 2023, and a lot has happened since then. Over the past 2 years, he shifted careers from college professor to full-time court interpreter, giving him the flexibility to chase waterfalls, wander ridgelines, and sneak in micro-adventures between jobs. He's camped nearly every month for 2 years straight, endured freezing nights in Savage Gulf, refined his pack system down to a science, and discovered a deep love for the wild pockets of Bankhead National Forest. We talked about the 2024 solar eclipse, wildlife encounters from timber rattlers to raccoons with a sweet tooth, from cold weather resilience to the magic of chasing new waterfalls. John Mark reminds us that the outdoors has endless lessons waiting for us, if we make the space for them. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, John Mark.
Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I have a really exciting guest with me today. He's a returning guest. He was on season 2 of the Hikes and Mikes podcast, and after 2 years, he's making his return. I'm really excited to catch up with him. His name is John Mark, and he's going to be catching us up with all his adventures over the last 2 years. John Mark, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast again. To catch people up, can you share a little bit about yourself and how you got started hiking?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me back. We talked about this the first time, but I really started hiking when I was really young. My dad loved to hike. He would take hikes in the area around where we lived and take me with him. I think at first just on his shoulders. He'd walk through the woods with me on his shoulders before I could even walk. But some of my earliest memories are walking through the woods with my dad, and I just always felt very much at peace when I'm out in nature.
And I know this is a hard question because such a long period of time has passed, but, we recorded, I think we figured out that we recorded in May of 2023. I think the episode came out a month later. Can you catch us up with what's been happening over the last 2 years? What's changed since the last time we talked?
So when we recorded our first episode, I was in the middle of really a career change. I was shifting from teaching. I'd been teaching college Spanish for the past pretty much the whole decade before that. And I've pivoted from doing that to being a freelance interpreter, mostly in the court system, but some medical as well. In some ways, I have less time, but in other ways, I have more control over my schedule. A lot of times, if I already have work near something cool, I will just go ahead and block off the next day and stay after and go find a waterfall or explore somewhere. So that's actually made it easier for me to spend more time out in nature.
Yeah, and you already mentioned that your love for the outdoors and hiking was sparked by your father. But I'm wondering, how has your relationship with the outdoors evolved over the last 2 years?
I'd say I'm getting more comfortable with the cold. Maybe not comfortable, more willing to go camping. In January, it snowed on me while I was camping, and that was a first. It was pretty miserable, but it was also just really good to see that I could deal with the challenge, and it was a chance to grow. And I'm looking for what I can do better next time if I do get stuck in ice and snow.
And, me being from the Pacific Northwest and in my local area, we get a handful of good snowfalls every winter. In your area in Tennessee, is that an every year occurrence where you'll get some snowfall every winter, or is that, hit or miss?
Yeah, we will usually get at least 1 or 2 weekends that we have maybe an inch at the most. If we get 3 or 4 inches, that's a lot for here. And it's rare that it lasts more than a weekend. Once in a while, you have another cold front come right behind another one, so we get it for a whole week. But that's very rare, and it usually shuts everything down. East Tennessee does tend to get more snow. And a lot of that's just kind of a function of higher altitude.
One thing that really caught my attention that you were able to do back in 2024, that you were able to camp every single month that year. Can you take us through that journey? How did that idea kind of come about? And then what did it teach you about not just, consistently going outdoors, but also anything that, came from it that benefited you, whether it was physically, mentally, or even emotionally?
Yeah, it kind of started, it was December and we were talking about New Year's resolutions, what I'm going to do. And I said, you know what, I'm going to camp every single month of the year. And, some of those were pretty big epic adventures. Others were one-nighters at a state park that's 45 minutes from my house. But all of those were either in a tent or in a backpacking shelter, a couple of different backpacking shelters. Again, some months I just had to watch my schedule and claim out a weekend. And sometimes it was a quick run out Friday night, come back Saturday because I had other things I had to take care of. And then the last one, I squeezed it in. It was December 30th and 31st. I did a one-nighter and then came back. It was good. It got me places that I wouldn't go, and it put me in the habit. And even now, I'm not going every month, but most months that I don't go, there's some other trip happening or some other hike happening. But I kind of built the habit of making sure that I am scheduling and holding myself to spending time outdoors. And the times that it hasn't been a camping trip, I've still gone on a hike. I've still had some kind of adventure experience and been intentional about incorporating that.
And I got to ask, doing it so consistently back in 2024 and even 2025, is there anything that changed or that you updated as far as maybe your pack list or maybe just gear in general that changed after, consistently doing it?
Well, I kind of had started with my gear list because about half my trips, I have a friend coming with me, and it's not always the same friend. I have several that I rotate through because nobody's available all the time. I have refined a pretty decent packing list, and I have it as a Google Documents, and I just kind of make a copy of the same file and tweak it depending on the weather and such. And I kind of have a column for each person, and it's as much for me to pack, for them to pack, but also what gear do we need? Do you need to borrow a sleeping bag? Do you need to borrow, I have an addiction to going to REI, and I'm not looking for a cure, but I have enough gear to outfit probably, if we took everything, I could probably outfit a half dozen people for a weekend. What am I bringing? What are you bringing? Usually I'm the one who brings the tent, and now are you bringing a 3-person tent, a 4-person tent? Are you bringing hammocks? Kind of a checklist to kind of work through what we're bringing, who's bringing what. And I've pretty much refined that down pretty smoothly to the point that I have bins and I got to rearrange it because each time it's slightly different. And if it's going to be wet, if it's going to be cold, if it's going to be really hot, that shifts what we're going to pack. But it has gotten a lot smoother, the packing and that process. So yeah, I definitely have refined that and gotten some go-to meals. A lot of these trips are car camping, so weight's not an issue. So we'll go ahead and bring a huge ice chest of whatever, big cast iron skillet or whatever. But yeah, we've kind of become a pretty well-oiled machine with, especially a couple of my friends. There's a couple of different friends who've repeatedly come on trips with me. We just kind of have gotten pretty smooth at that. So I'm looking forward to more trips like that where it's just kind of, we figured out what we're doing. Now we just show up, set up, and get to enjoy ourselves out here.
Yeah, and I know this one's going to be a tough question because I bet every experience was memorable, but are there any standout months or maybe standout experiences, whether, it was a magical experience or maybe it snowed or rained on you, so it made things a little bit more challenging, but is there any standout moments or months that you can share?
Definitely Bankhead has become a repeat place. I think the first time we recorded, I think no, it wasn't Labor Day, it was August. And then I went back, and I've been back to Bankhead. Probably about half my trips since then have been to Bankhead National Forest, which is 3 hours from me. So that's just been kind of a repeat place. But as far as a memorable, I would say, and this wasn't during 2024 when I went every month. It was my first camp out this year in 2025. I went to Savage Gulf State Park with my friend Jacob. It's kind of close to the midway point between where he lives and where I live. It was going to be cold. It was January. I think it was Martin Luther King weekend. And we knew it was going to be cold. And Savage Gulf State Park it's about 4 hours east of me. It's in Tennessee, where Tennessee starts to have some higher altitude. And it's this gorge. And there's multiple entrances to the park, and you can backpack through it. We weren't backpacking. We were just going to set up and do some hiking. And it was going to be cold. It had snowed a few days before, but the snow was pretty much melted. There were still a few patches here and there, but the roads were clear. And it was going to be cold. We were hoping for some good weather. And I got there. I got set up. And of course, we were planning. We had lots of soups. We had lots of hot tea was a plan. And I was actually very happy with the tent setup. Put a wool blanket on the bottom of the tent. And on top of that, I put the sleeping pads and then sleeping bags. And then, so each had our own sleeping bag. And then over both sleeping bags, another fairly heavy wool blanket. So we were pretty well insulated inside the tent. And so we got set up. But then that first night, it was pretty drizzly, but that's okay. We'll be okay in the morning. And then the next morning we hiked, and it was pretty wet and drizzly the whole hike. It was maybe in the upper 30s. Beautiful views. Savage Gulf has some of the best views in Tennessee, I think, just because you're up on this cliff edge. It was wet and drizzly the whole day. There are waterfalls. They were cool to see. It was in the 30s, and it was supposed to get down to freezing that night. And then we're looking at the forecast, and the following night was going to get down, not just below freezing, it was going to get, I think, down into the negatives. And so we got done hiking, and we was like, you know what, we're probably going to pack up and head out tomorrow. And that was our plan. So we went to bed. We had our nice hot soup. It might have been some gumbo or something, and went to bed. And then we woke up the next morning, and it was snowing. And we got probably a couple inches of snow that morning. And it had rained all night and then turned to snow. And so all the, like guy lines, we had a dining fly set up, and all the knots were soaked with water and then frozen solid. So it was miserable packing up. I don't know if I've ever been so miserable on a camping trip as I was trying to pack up ice-coated stuff. Now, we were fine in the tent. Until we left the tent, we were perfectly fine and warm and cozy. But then packing up was not fun. And this was a campground where it wasn't exactly car camping. It wasn't backpacking. So it's one where you park, and then it was maybe a quarter-mile walk from where you park to where the campsite is. So not bad, but enough to be miserable if it's that cold and you're carrying everything. It's wet and frozen. And then we had to get out there, and the roads were slick because, again, the roads had been rained on, and then it froze. And so you had this nice, smooth layer of ice on these mountain roads. So it was a bit of an adventure getting out of there, but that is definitely a memorable trip. And it made me realize that I want to get better at driving in snow. I want a four-wheel drive vehicle. That's on my wish list. Hopefully in the next year or so, I'll manage to pull that off. But I also realized, I have gear to be warm in a tent if it gets that cold. I don't have gear to be warm doing stuff outside the tent if it's down below freezing. And so that's something that I want to look into, and it's an area that I'd like to grow. Again, I'm not a fan of the cold, but I do want to intentionally be getting out of nature more often. And so that's kind of, I guess, an area that I can work on for next time.
And I'm glad you shared that, because I'm the same way. I am a fair weather hiker, but I've been able to dial in my layering during the winter months where it makes things comfortable. But yeah, once you get soaked, it's hard to get your body temperature back up.
Yeah, staying dry is key. And I think if it was going to warm up in a couple of days, we may would have pushed through, but it wasn't going to warm up. It was only going to get colder. And so we needed to pack up. And there's no way to pack up stuff that's coated in snow without getting yourself all wet. At least I haven't found one.
Now, John Mark, one thing that, you've also done consistently is post waterfalls on your Instagram. And they tend to be a big theme in a lot of your adventures. What about them has kept calling you back? And what have been some memorable ones over the last 2 years?
I think that was one of, because I think in the episode you always ask the this or that questions, right? And I think one of the ones you asked me the first time was waterfalls or summits. And if I remember correctly, my answer was I'm not sure. I like them both. But if you look at my adventures, I've been doing a lot more waterfalls than summits, because a lot of the cool places that are less than 4 hours away from here, you don't really have a peak, but you do have like these gorges or valleys that will have lots of waterfalls. And I've discovered Bankhead National Forest, which is 3 hours from my house. Every time I've gone there, except this last time. I think this very past time when I went in August was the first time I went there that I didn't see a new waterfall. I think I would have seen a new waterfall if it wasn't such a dry month. Every single time I've gone there, I've found something new and something cool. And I have not run out of new places to explore there. Here in the South, it is pretty warm from April until September, even going into October. It can be in the 80s. And so a waterfall can be a really nice way to cool off. It can be a really nice treat on a hot, muggy, especially a summer day. If you're hiking in July, August, you're going to want some way to cool off. And so at least if there's a stream to stick your feet in, that's great. But a waterfall, and these waterfalls, and these even in August, they are cold. And I don't like being cold, but in August, I want to be cold because it's so hot and muggy. It's a very appealing hike. A hike without waterfalls or a creek in August is just pretty miserable. So I just find myself going back to them. And each one's different, you know. Now, the first time I went to Bankhead, the very first time I went there is when I was with one of my best friends that he lives in New Orleans, but we meet up in camp 2 or 3 times a year if we can. It's hard to get our schedules to line up. All the weekends I'm free, he's busy, and then he's free on a weekend and I'm booked solid. We've gone to Bankhead several times, but the first time we went there, we didn't know what we were doing. We just found it on a map and said, hey, there might be something cool here, and started hiking. We found a couple waterfalls and we're following up this creek. This was in August, but it had just rained that week. And so there's pretty good flow on almost all the waterfalls. And I was standing there in front of this waterfall, just enjoying nature, taking it in. And all of a sudden there was this massive timber rattler. And it was right there in front of me, and it came straight at me. It wasn't chasing me. Everybody's like, oh no, snakes don't chase people. But I was standing on a sandbar. I think it fell down the waterfall. But I got to that sandbar and kind of seemed to get its bearings. And then it came over and looked at us, kind of hid behind a stump and looked at us. You know, I jumped out of his way and maybe yelled some other words. But as soon as I came to my wits, I went and grabbed my camera and started taking pictures of it. And I got some really good shots. It came and he kind of hid behind this stump of wood in the ground and looked at us for a while, decided we were boring. And then he was trying to climb up the waterfall. It was interesting. He just made several efforts. I probably need to repost some of that video around the time this episode comes out so everybody can see it. But the snake was trying to climb the waterfall and not doing it. I'm wondering if when there's less flow, he was able to get up there. But I got some amazing shots. And that, you know, startled me, but then it was just beautiful and just amazing to watch how fast it could swim, how it was trying to climb. It was a really cool thing to watch. I've been hoping to see another snake out there ever since, and they've all been hiding from me.
I think you and B have really showcased what Bankhead National Forest has to offer, especially when it comes to waterfalls. Some of the places that both of you have posted just look out of this world. It's so green and lush.
Oh, it is. It is. It's green in winter, too. I love that.
Really?
It has a lot of hemlock trees and a lot of cypress, and both of those are evergreen, so you still have a lot of green, lush feeling stuff even when it's wintry. And then also in Bankhead, and I've done this several times, there are a lot of places where there's not an official trail, but you look at a topographical map and you see there's a creek and you see there's some altitude. You know, you can see those contour lines are pretty close together and the creek crosses them. Like, you know, there might be a waterfall there. And I found some pretty cool waterfalls that, you know, I'm sure somebody else has seen it, but I don't know of anybody else who's seen that waterfall. This place has been around forever. I'm sure Native Americans, explorers, other people have been through there before me. But there's not a trail and there's not a name. It's just something you look at the topographical map and figure out where there might be something cool. And haven't always had success with that, but more often than not, if not a waterfall, it's still a really cool place to explore. And as long as there's running water, it's going to be a cool place to be.
Seeing that massive timber rattler come over the waterfall must have been quite the experience. And I'm wondering, you know, you mentioned that you haven't been able to spot any since then, but have you had any other interesting wildlife encounters over the last 2 years?
Well, here's another one. This was during my 2024 camping area month. I think it was September, but I went up to Southern Illinois to Shawnee National Forest, which I really want to go there more often. I've only been there once. I went in, it must have been September, and all the waterfalls were dry. I could tell where they were supposed to be because you can see the creek bed and you can see where it's eroded, but it was so dry there weren't any. But it was still some really cool hiking. There was a really neat natural bridge that the trail went on. I was staying at a Forest Service campground there, and I was camping pretty much every month. And so I had this bin of food that I just lugged with me every time I went camping. And whatever I didn't eat on a given trip, I just leave in there for the next trip. And so I was there digging through my camping bin, and there was a bag of trail mix. It was from Kroger. It's just called their Indulgent Trail Mix. And it has white chocolate chips and dark chocolate chips and I think peanut butter chips and caramel chips, several kinds of those. Plus, you know, several kinds of nuts, peanuts, cashews, whatever, some raisins. But mostly it's a lot of different kind of chocolate chips in this trail mix. And I'd bought it probably in June or so and just never gotten around to opening that bag. And so I go to grab that bag, and it's September now, and over the course of my adventures, that bag must have melted and re-solidified. So I had a brick of melted chocolate and nuts and raisins, which, sure, that's fine. We're camping. I could just eat it. So I open the bag, and I'm just chomping down on this boulder of candy. And I'm like, don't want it to go to waste. So I'd been eating that as my dessert after dinner, and then it was about dark, and so I went up to where the outhouse was, which is also where I could get signal so I could check in on people back home and see how everything was going and just somewhat stay in touch. So I went up there to do that just as it was getting dark, used the outhouse, and I came back just as the sun was setting, walking to my campsite. I have my headlamp, but I don't quite need it because it's not quite dark enough. And I hear a scurrying noise and something falls. And so I turn my light and I see a critter with rings around its tail scooting up a tree. So I got visited by a raccoon. And I realized that my candy brick was gone. And then I found it on the ground. But I didn't want to eat it after that. Number one, it was in the dirt. Number two, I don't know if the raccoon bit on it. Threw it away they had raccoon-proof trash cans. I went and threw it away there because I didn't want to encourage the raccoon to keep coming back and getting into my stuff. And the rest of that trip, I was concerned. I have a little pocket rocket and kettle that I used to cook my food, and I left it on the picnic table. I was a little bit worried that the raccoon's going to come back and mess with other stuff, but I didn't see him again. I guess all he wanted was my brick of candy. But, we talked about you want your food to be bear-proof, but it's not just bears. A lot of times it's other critters. A mouse could be just as terrible if it gets into your stash of food. So just something I also try to be more intentional about. Since then, I've gotten myself a bear canister that I'll use if I'm backpacking or even if I'm car camping. It might be a good thing to keep all the treats in, to keep it handy without treading in a vehicle. We don't have grizzly bears, but black bears can still be pretty destructive if they're going after food. I haven't ran into any yet, but you try to be prepared even if it's unlikely, because once it happens, there's nothing you can do. A trip could be ruined really fast if your food has all been consumed by an uninvited guest.
One thing that also caught my attention that I was happy to see is you're still breaking out the hiking kilt sometimes.
Absolutely.
Have you had any memorable reactions or moments over the last year?
Once in a while, somebody will say something. Usually people just say, nice kilt. People always, there's jokes, what do you wear under a kilt? And my answer is boots, don't you see them? But I don't know that I've actually had anybody really have a weird reaction to it other than, I will say this. This was at the eclipse. Somebody thought I was wearing my kilt and somebody thought I was a park ranger. I didn't know that was part of the official uniform, but I was wearing a tan khaki-colored shirt and a olive green kilt. So, it's the correct color scheme, I guess. But, hey, maybe park rangers should start wearing kilts.
And I was able to actually see somebody in the wild here in Washington State wearing a hiking kilt over the last year. So it's growing.
Yeah. Whenever I've had people say, oh, I should wear mine more. Or people say, oh, I have a traditional one. I should get one for hiking. Because there are people who like their family Scott or something who have a traditional kind of a dress kilt. It's kind of a more formal thing.
And then last time we talked about a lot of your experiences visiting and exploring South America, specifically Ecuador. Has there been any recent travels that kind of stick out for you?
I have not been to Ecuador since we recorded. I'm hoping to go this coming January or around New Year's. I'm still getting all my ducks in a row for that to happen. I did go on a cruise. That's, I think, the closest thing to international travel I've done in the past year. And that was a pretty cool trip. I got to visit Bahamas, Jamaica, and Grand Cayman, which I'd never been to before. And I'd never been on a cruise before. So that was a really cool experience. I haven't left the country since, other than that.
Now, John Mark, I'm not sure if we had this segment back in season 2, but one of the regular segments that we've had over the last couple of years or over the last year is we do a deep dive into our guest Instagram. And, the one that stood out for me was the 2024 solar eclipse post, because I ended up traveling to Maine to catch it. And it was an amazing experience. And I recommend to anybody, if they get a chance to catch a solar eclipse, please do. Can you describe your experience catching the 2024 solar eclipse?
That eclipse, it just kind of went straight across the country. It's amazing. So that was with one of my friends from New Orleans and his roommate. We'd been trying to plan a camping trip, and they said, oh, hey, the eclipse is here, so let's do that. And so I started digging through maps of Arkansas and trying to figure out, there's maps of the path of the eclipse. I was looking, where does the eclipse cross some cool camping places. And out in the Ouachitas, I found some cool options, and I'd never been there before. And so I went out a couple days early early just to scope out and claim a spot. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the eclipse was... Yeah, that was April of 24. So I got out there Thursday, and my friends didn't get there till Saturday afternoon. And I got out there Thursday, and people were already there before me. And the eclipse was Monday. The Thursday before, there were already people out there claiming spots in Ouachita National Forest near the Albert Pike area, for anybody familiar with that. I'd never been out there before. And I looked at maps, and I thought I saw some places to camp. And then I got there, and the places I thought weren't good, but there were other really great places. There's a lot of kind of little pull-offs along some of the Forest Service roads. There's just a little clearing. You can park a car. There's a fire pit, and you can set up camp. And so I was trying to get out there Thursday, and I was hoping to get there by noon, and I got there around the time the sun was going down. So I just was looking for a good spot, didn't really see one I liked, but I just grabbed one, set up my hammock, stayed the night. And the next day I went looking for a good spot, and people were claiming them fast. And then I started going down the service road. I actually got my truck stuck and had to hike out and flag down someone to get me unstuck. Because, again, I need a four-wheel drive vehicle. People were claiming it was packed. I don't know if that place had ever been so full. But I found a really cool spot where there's a creek running by our campsite and claimed it. And I set up a tent. I set up 2 hammocks. I set up chairs. I set everything else up. And I met some other people from Arkansas who were camping there. And so I claimed a spot for my friends who were getting there Saturday. I claimed it on Friday morning. And then I met some other cool people from Arkansas who'd set up. There was a friend group who came out there, and a couple of them did a lot of backpacking. And so while I was waiting for my friends to come, I got to hang out with them and connect with them. And they're really cool people. And it was just a really cool vibe. Everybody who was out there was just chilling, just ready to enjoy nature. And then my friends came out from Louisiana. They got there late Saturday afternoon. And then Sunday, we did some hiking. I'd scouted out some, just thinking about where we want to catch the eclipse. I wanted to catch it from the top of a mountain. And there's a mountain there called Buckeye Mountain. It's called a mountain, but it's really like a long ridge. It's not like a single peak. It has like a high point, but then ridge that goes on for probably miles. And so we went and we hiked along the ridge, just kind of thinking, where do we want to be? This would have been Sunday. The eclipse was the following day. Where do we want to be to catch the actual eclipse? And so we ended up doing a loop there. There's a waterfall along the way. It's a pretty hike. It was probably like a 9-mile, 10-mile hike. It wiped us out. And then Monday morning we got up, we had our breakfast, and then we grabbed what I call this trail cutery. It's like charcuterie, but on the trail. And I'll bring like a little tiny cutting board and then a whole bunch of like summer sausage, cheese, and stuff that are all in the backpack. And then you kind of, once you get where you're going, set it up and have your little trail cutery. So we packed that and hiked up, and pretty much all along the whole ridge, there were people. And we'd spotted 2 or 3 spots that we thought were pretty good clearings to watch it from. And they were all pretty full. There was probably a dozen or so people at the spot we were at. But everybody was very friendly. I mean, it's the most crowded I've ever been out in a wilderness area. But everybody's really just, we call it in Spanish, buena onda. How do you say that? Good vibes, really chill. Kind of felt like an overcast day. Kind of felt like there were some clouds. When you look up, it's like, oh, wait, it's not that cloudy. Just the sun doesn't feel as right. That's weird. And then like there's a whole thing where like if you look at the shadows, it made a weird crescent shape. And I'd seen that before. When I first moved to Tennessee in 2017, there was an eclipse. And I didn't make it to the actual eclipse. We had a partial here. And so I'd seen like the weird crescent shadows. But unless you're really looking for that, you don't notice it. Just feel like it feels like a bit of an overcast day. And then all of a sudden it hit. And it felt like nighttime. And you could see stars. And where the sun should be was just this silver ring. And you could look at it. You know, as it got closer and closer, we all had the glasses and we could look up at it and see that the sun was, you know, had a dent in it. It was not quite a circle. It was like an ordeal with a bite taken out of it. But then when it actually hit and the sky got dark, it was eerie. It felt creepy. I can absolutely imagine, you know, this happening before people could predict them and didn't know it was going to come. All of a sudden the sun is gone and there's just a silver ring where it should be in the middle of the day. I can see that really freaking people out. But it lasted for a couple of minutes. It was really eerie. And then all of a sudden the sun was back. And it wasn't still the full sun, but it, you know, the sky wasn't dark anymore and the ring was gone. And we had glasses. I had ordered a lens cover for my camera to be able to take nice pictures with my mirrorless camera. And it was delayed in the mail and was delivered while I was on the trip. So I came home and I'll have it for the next time I need it, I guess. I didn't get any good pictures with my nice camera of the actual eclipse, but I did with my phone because I was able to put the glasses over the phone lens. I got video of it, and then my other friends got some really cool pictures. It was just crazy how in the middle of the day it just got dark. It was eerie and beautiful at the same time. And if I hadn't known it was going to happen, it would have freaked me out.
Yeah, it was a truly remarkable experience that I definitely recommend people, if they have a chance, or even if they want to experience it, travel to a solar eclipse.
Yeah, I'm hoping to catch another one.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. It's something really unique, especially if you get the full totality. Now, John Mark, that was it for the regular questions. These last set of questions are questions we like to ask all our guests. The first one being, when it comes to the end of the hike routine, or maybe it's a summit routine, for some hikers, it's packing a favorite snack or drink. For others, it's a moment of zen. For a lot of us, it's that favorite meal afterwards. Is there a regular custom or routine that you like to do when you reach your destination or when you make it back out?
Yeah. So there's, I guess, two different answers. When I get to the peak, or when I get if it's a out and back trail, the midpoint trail, I often will make tea. Even on the hot summer days, I like hot tea, or sometimes I'll do coffee, but usually it's tea. I'll make myself hot tea, a little kettle I carry, even on day hikes. And so a lot of times I'm on top of a mountain or at the end of the trail making myself hot tea before I turn around. So that's that ritual. And then, the getting home, the getting back ritual, for me, it's that after hiking, after camping shower, because daily hiking, even camping, you camp 2 or 3 days, and the standard for cleanliness while you're camping is definitely not the same as when you're at home. And sure, maybe I get in a waterfall and I got the worst of the muck off of me, but I'm still not quite clean. So you get home and you get in that hot shower and you just scrub everything with soap. That just kind of transition from the wild back into, oh, now I'm a civilized person again. That's kind of a shower ritual, I guess.
This next one is about your pack list. Is there a luxury item that you tend to pack that falls outside of the essentials?
I guess my tea kettle would fit for that. It's pretty light, but it's still not an essential, but I like having that. I'm not an ultralight camper. Even when I backpack, I carry my camera. I carry, I'm not going for extra heavy stuff. I don't carry cast iron when I'm backpacking. I've seen cast iron out where people must have carried it in backpacking and then decided to leave it because it was so heavy. But, I would rather be comfortable than miserable. And I think there's a balance there where it's not ultra light, but it's still light enough to get out there and be more comfortable. So again, my kettle I carry even on most day hikes. And then when I am camping, I usually bring my toys. I bring my GoPro, I bring my Nikon. I need to start bringing my drone. I have a drone and I need to get comfortable using it and taking it more places. I did take it on one hike. I was going to get some waterfall footage, and I got out there and realized I didn't have the cable that connected my phone to the controller, and so I couldn't do anything. Like 2 or 3 times I've had it with me, was missing, or I didn't have the battery or something. I'm like, what I need to do is block off a day at home and just go out to an empty soccer field or baseball field and just get really comfortable using it so that it's second nature like the rest of my gear is. And I just haven't made time for that.
Yeah, I've fallen victim many a times where I accidentally forget the SD card in my laptop because I was going through footage and pictures, and then I fly the drone and there's no SD card, and the internal memory is not enough for, maybe 5 pictures, and then it fills up.
My Nikon has 2 slots, and so that's nice because there's, even if I take one out, there's a backup card in there. But GoPro doesn't have any internal memory. So it's one of those things I just need to be more intentional on the checklist for that.
Yeah, I ended up buying a second SD card, and I always have one in the carrying case. And then if it's in the drone, then, there's that one. But if I do forget it in the laptop, I do have a backup one now just in case. Now, John Mark, you mentioned that you're looking at going back to South America, possibly in the coming year. But is there any other hiking or travel goals that you have for the remainder of 2025 or 2026?
Let's see, I will be going to Boston. I'm hoping to get some hiking there. I'm not planning this trip, but I am hoping to get some hiking there. And he has mentioned that there's some beautiful mountains, and he knows I love to hike. So I think that's in the works on that trip. I got one camping trip with my in-laws coming up. And that's always a good time. It tends to be at a more established campground, and it's less about getting out in the very wild places, more about having quality time together. So that should be a good time. I am hoping to get back to Ecuador probably around New Year's. I'm still trying to get all my ducks in a row on that. I don't know if I'll end up camping. It's a good chance I will camp when I go. But even if I don't camp, I will be getting some amazing shots of mountains and hopefully getting some hiking in it. Just the camping. When I'm in Ecuador, I don't bring camping gear with me because it's bulky and heavy, and airplanes are so limited on weight and stuff. At the most, I might bring a sleeping bag. But I grew up in Ecuador. I was in the Scout Center. I'm still in touch with a lot of people, and so I end up borrowing gear. It's just a matter if I can get my friends to organize something and loan me gear. And hopefully it does happen, and hopefully we get some good nature shots from that, because Ecuador has some of the most amazing landscapes. The contrast from the coast at sea level to mountains that are, I think about 30,000 feet above sea level. I have to go back and look. Actually, the highest mountain in Ecuador, Chimborazo, is featured in this month's National Geographic. I was looking at it right before we hopped on to record. I think it must be for October because I just got it. But anyhow, it's talking about how there are other mountains that could be considered higher higher than Everest. And the first one that it features is Chimborazo, which is the furthest point from the center of the Earth, because the Earth at the equator sticks out a little bit further than the rest of the world. Something about the way it spins and it pushes out. Some kind of physics thing going on there. It's the highest point if you measure from the center of the Earth, or it's the closest point to the sun at noon every day. So I'm hoping to get some more good shots of that. And there's just all the contrasts, all the climates you find. I mean, you're in the Pacific Northwest. It's the same kind of thing where just all these microclimates as the altitude changes. And it's an incredible place to experience. And I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what you're able to capture when you make it back down there and what the rest of 2025 has to offer for you, John Mark. That was it for the regular questions. This last section of the podcast is the this or that questions. Some of these you might be familiar, but there are some new ones for season 12. And the first one is, when it comes to hiking seasons, if you had to choose, would you choose summer hiking or fall hiking?
Summer.
And then I think we discussed this earlier on in the podcast, but if you had to choose between them, waterfalls or summits?
Apparently waterfalls. If you look at my feed, that's clearly what's been. So maybe I need to intentionally do some more summits. But waterfalls currently seem to be winning.
I know in the East Coast, they don't really believe in switchbacks, but if you had to choose a route to take to a summit, would you do switchbacks or straight up?
Probably switchbacks. I mean, sometimes the trail does go straight up, but switchbacks, even though they're annoying, they're way easier and they don't burn your energy near as fast.
And then our most controversial question, trek poles or freehand?
I have gotten trek poles within the past year and started using them more often. If I'm bushwhacking or it's really steep, they do make a difference.
And then this next one's about your footwear, trail runners or hiking boots?
I do like hiking boots. I also will wear sandals, but then I made the mistake of only having sandals on a recent trip, and my feet were miserable because there was just so much grit that got in there. But I'm going to go with hiking boots.
And then when it comes to these types of trails, do you prefer a loop trail or an out and back trail?
Which one has the most waterfalls? Usually I do prefer a loop just because it's nice to not retrace your steps and to see something new after every turn. But a lot of times it's kind of, I'm looking at not just as a loop or out and back, but what are the other things along the trail, which is going to be the overall better experience. And so end up doing probably a mix. But if I had to choose, all things being equal, a loop.
And then when it comes to these type of trail hazards, would you choose a muddy trail or a rocky trail?
I think a rocky trail. Mud will get your feet wet. Mud can just suck really bad. Whereas, rocks are annoying, but if your shoes are on well and you're not wearing sandals like I did that time, then your feet can handle the rocks. So your foot gear can handle the rocks a lot better than mud usually.
And then this one's one of our toughest ones, but sunset hikes or sunrise hikes?
Oh, that is tough. I think probably I'm more likely to do a sunset hike. I have a bad habit of staying up too late. I sit around the campfire talking and making tea and enjoy myself, and then struggle to get up early enough for a sunrise hike.
And then Tennessee and the East Coast is known for both of these, but spring wildflowers or fall colors?
Spring wildflowers. I don't like winter, and I feel like fall colors are just warning you that winter is about to show up, whereas spring flowers are the promise that winter is going away and summer is coming.
And then this next one's a new one for season 12, but with the advancement of electrolytes, especially when it comes to hiking and backpacking, there's so many different options, but when it comes to replenishing your electrolytes, do you like to do tablets or powdered drinks?
Powdered drinks, and then again, a lot of times I'm not backpacking, a lot of times I'm car camping and doing day hikes, and so I'll just have an ice chest with a whole bunch of drinks, and there'll be a couple packs of Gatorade in there.
And then these next ones are more related to backpacking and camping. But if you had to choose between these two options, would you go bug bites or sunburn?
Ooh, I have suffered terribly with both. Actually, my most recent camping trip, there were so many ticks. I think I sat there for an hour getting ticks off my ankles. Ticks, and then on top of that, chiggers. And both of those will leave you miserable for a couple of days even. I think I would rather sunburn than bug bites. But I don't know. I want neither one.
And then this next one is about trail hazards on camping and backpacking trips. But if you had to choose between these, would you choose a stream crossing or a snowfield traverse?
Definitely a stream crossing. I'm much more comfortable crossing a stream. Snow and ice is just a bit out of my comfort zone. Whereas a stream crossing, again, I mentioned I've started using hiking sticks, hiking poles. It was my July trip this year. It was a backpacking trip so one of the guys I met at the Eclipse, we met up again in July to go backpacking in the same area. I had an amazing time hiking along the Little Missouri. It was hot, but there was a river. It was great, but it just rained, and so the river is really high. And apparently this river that But normally when you ford it and wade across, it's maybe knee high. It was closer to ankle high. And so I'm there. I've got my heavy pack. I've got my camera clipped on front of my pack. And I'm so glad that I had those hiking poles to get across the creek because the water was moving fast and it was up to my waist.
And then this next one, John Mark, is when it comes to your pack list, are you packing luxury items or ultralight gear?
Yeah, we kind of talked about this earlier, but I tend to lean towards luxury. I bring my camera, I bring some fancy things. I like my little kettle. Some people are so ultralight that they just, bring dehydrated food and cold soak it the whole time. And, I get dehydrated. I've actually made my own dehydrated foods. There's room for that. But at the point that you're just eating cold food, that's just miserable. So I think there's a balance there. I think you want to keep it light enough that you can carry it and not be miserable carrying it. But you also don't want to have a super light pack, but then not actually be able to enjoy yourself while you're out there.
Yeah, it's always about finding a balance. Well, that was it, John Mark, for the This or That questions. For folks that want to follow your journey for the remainder of the year and for 2026, where are some of the places they can follow you on social media and online?
So the main place I post is on Instagram, where I'm Jungle Mark Adventure. And then I have a Facebook page that's also Jungle Mark Adventures. Both of those places where I tend to post the same pictures on both of those. I tend to interact with people a little bit more on the Instagram than the Facebook. I feel like Instagram, the algorithm is just annoying me a lot. And I feel like there's got to be some better option. I feel like Instagram about 10 years ago was a lot better. If you do have a separate social media platform that you think is wonderful for posting amazing pictures and videos of adventures, then please leave a comment on my stuff so I can check it out.
And we'll be sure to link both your Instagram and Facebook in the episode show notes so people can follow along. John Mark, it has been a blast talking to you and reconnecting with you. Looking forward to what the rest of the year has to offer, and appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to speak with us.
Absolutely. I always appreciate your post on Instagram. And I mentioned this earlier, but I'm looking forward to when you do make it out here to catching up with you on a trail.
And that brings us to the end of this episode alongside John Mark. We extend a heartfelt thanks to them for joining us on the podcast. Be sure to follow them on Instagram at Jungle Mark Adventure. And for more, be sure to check out the episode show notes. This episode of Hikes and Mics was produced by Jordan Smith. Be sure to follow her adventures on Instagram at jordan.journeys. New episodes will drop every Monday throughout the fall hiking season, with occasional Friday bonus episodes sprinkled in. To make sure you never miss a moment of these inspiring trail stories, hit the follow or subscribe button. Your support truly keeps this community growing. Don't forget to connect with us on Instagram at Hikes and Mics. That's where you'll find behind-the-scenes episode visuals, my own hiking adventures, and plenty more to keep the fall inspiration flowing. As we wrap up today's journey, remember, the trails may be covered in leaves, but the spirit of adventure is wide open. So tread those happy trails, breathe in that crisp autumn air, and keep exploring. Until next time, my fellow hikers, happy hiking. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade. It's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, ursaminoroutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, ursaminoroutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order.